Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be exploring some pretty mind-blowing ideas from the world of cell biology and quantum physics.
Sounds intense.
It is, but it's also super fascinating. We're going to be hearing a lot from Dr. Bruce Lipton.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him. He's that guy who talks about how our thoughts can shape our reality, right?
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
one of his main ideas. And we're going to be taking a deep dive into his work today, exploring how it relates to consciousness, energy, and even the nature of reality itself. Have you ever considered that you might be more than just a physical body?
I mean, I've definitely thought about it, but I'm not sure I fully grasped the concept.
That's exactly what we're here to explore. We'll be diving into Dr. Lipton's ideas, breaking them down into understandable pieces.
Perfect. I'm ready to have my mind blown.
So one of the things that makes Dr. Lipton's work so unique is that he doesn't just throw out these big, out-there ideas. He actually backs them up with scientific principles.
Right, he's a scientist himself.
That's right. And he often draws from quantum physics to explain his theories.
Quantum physics? That's some seriously complex stuff.
It can be, but we're going to break it down and make it as accessible as possible. So the core idea here is that consciousness is not merely a passive observer of reality.
Oh, I see. So it's not just about us observing things, but actually interacting with and influencing things.
Exactly. Dr. Lipton suggests that our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs can actually influence the physical world around us.
Okay, so not just our internal world, but actually the external world, too.
Yes, it's all interconnected. So how does that work? Well, one way Dr. Lipton explains this is through the concept of constructive and destructive interference. Have you ever heard of that before?
I can't say that I have. That's a new one.
Well, it's a principle from quantum physics that basically says that energy often behaves like a wave. When waves are in sync, they amplify each other, creating something called constructive interference.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's like when two people are working together really well, they can accomplish more than if they were working separately.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. And on the flip side, when waves clash, they can cancel each other out. That's destructive interference.
Ah, so that's more like when people are butting heads and not working together.
Exactly. Now think about how this relates to our daily lives and to Dr. Lipton's ideas. Have you ever heard people talk about good vibes and bad vibes?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Well, it turns out those aren't just New Age slogans. They actually reflect these principles of energy. When you're surrounded by positive energy, whether it's from being with supportive friends or simply being in a beautiful natural setting, you feel uplifted, empowered, right?
Yes, for sure.
That's constructive interference at work. But when you encounter negativity, whether it's a toxic work environment or even your own negative thoughts, it can leave you feeling drained.
Oh, absolutely.
That's destructive interference.
Yeah. Wow, that's a pretty cool way to look at it. So then how does that tie into the physical world we experience? How does energy actually shape our reality?
Well, that's where things get really mind-blowing. Dr. Lipton argues that the physical universe, the one we perceive with our senses, is essentially an illusion.
Whoa, hold on a second. Is he saying that the physical world doesn't actually exist? Like, I'm not actually sitting in this chair right now.
Not exactly. What he's suggesting is that our perception of the material world is limited.
Okay, so it's more like we are perceiving it through our human senses, which have limitations.
Right. And quantum physics supports this idea. It says that everything we perceive as solid matter is actually made up of atoms. And atoms, at their core, aren't solid little balls. They're more like bundles of vibrating energy.
So if everything is energy, why does the world seem so solid? Like, why don't I just fall right through this chair?
It's a great question. Think of it like a fan. When the fan is off, you can see the individual blades. But when it's spinning really fast, those blades blur together and it looks like a solid disk.
Ah, so it's like the energy is moving so fast that it creates the illusion of solidity.
Exactly. Dr. Lipton suggests that the physical world is kind of like that spinning fan. It's a whirlwind of energy that our senses interpret as solid matter.
Okay, that's a helpful analogy. But if our bodies are essentially made of energy, who are we really? What's the essence of our being?
That's a huge question, right?
Yeah.
One that's been pondered for centuries. And Dr. Lipton offers a really interesting perspective on this, using the analogy of a television set. He compares the human body to the TV itself.
And the TV shows are our consciousness.
Not the shows themselves, but the broadcast signal, the information, the images and sounds.
Okay, I'm following so far. But how does that connect to us as humans?
Well, think about it. The TV itself is a physical object.
Right.
But the broadcast, that's intangible. It exists beyond the physical realm.
Okay, I get that.
Dr. Lipton suggests that our consciousness is like that broadcast. Our thoughts, our feelings, they're not bound by the physical limitations of our bodies.
So he's saying that our consciousness can exist separately from our bodies.
That's the implication. Think about it, the broadcast doesn't just disappear when you turn off the TV.
No, it's still out there somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the same way, Dr. Lipton proposes that our consciousness continues even when the physical body stops functioning.
So are we essentially saying that we never really die?
It's definitely a thought-provoking concept. Dr. Lipton suggests that what we perceive as death is just a transition.
Kind of like switching channels on the TV.
Exactly. Our energy, our consciousness, it simply moves to a different realm, a different frequency.
Okay, so if that's the case, then why even have a physical body? What's the point of all this if we're just going to switch channels anyway?
That's a really great question. And Dr. Lipton answers it in a very humorous and insightful way.
I love his humor.
Me too. He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, if you're just a spirit, what does chocolate taste like?
Huh. That's a great point.
Right. The point is that our bodies allow us to experience the richness of the physical world. The taste of chocolate, the warmth of the sun, the joy of connection. We're here to experience, to learn, to grow through these sensations and emotions. Our bodies act like these incredible transducers.
Transducers. What are those?
They convert energy into a form we can perceive, like a radio converts radio waves into sound we can hear. And that brings up another fascinating point. We're not just receiving energy, we're broadcasting it out into the world too. You know how a radio picks up signals?
Yeah?
Well, we're kind of like radios ourselves, constantly transmitting our own energy signature. Our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, it's all energy we're sending out all the time. What are your initial thoughts on that?
That's pretty wild when you think about it. So that means the energy we put out there could be impacting others all the time, right?
That's exactly what Dr. Lipton suggests. He says that our energy can have a ripple effect, influencing not only our own experiences, but also the experiences of those around us. So if we're buying into this idea that we're all energetic beings, how do you think that changes how we live our lives?
That's a big question. Maybe it means we should be more mindful of the energy we're putting out there.
Exactly. And Dr. Lipton has a really fascinating example that illustrates just how powerful this energy can be. It involves a rather unexpected creature, a snail.
A snail? Now I'm really curious.
I thought you might be. Think about how a snail navigates its world. This tiny creature, with no parents to teach it and no formal education, somehow manages to find food, shelter, and even a mate. How does it do this?
Yeah, that's a pretty impressive feat for a snail. I have no idea how they do that. Tell me more.
Well, Dr. Lipton says that a snail actually navigates by sensing energy fields. It's drawn to sources of positive energy.
Like food.
Yeah, exactly. Things like nutrient-rich plants. And it's repelled by sources of negative energy, like potential threats. So even a tiny creature like a snail can pick up on these energy fields. That's amazing.
It is, and Dr. Lipton suggests that this sensitivity isn't limited to snails. He believes that we humans are also influenced by energy, maybe even more than we realize.
I can see that. Like, have you ever just felt drawn to a certain person or place? Or gotten like a bad vibe from someone?
Totally. Like meeting someone new and instantly feeling like you've known them forever. Or the opposite, like just feeling totally uncomfortable around someone for no apparent reason.
Right. Maybe that's our own internal energy compass at work, picking up on those subtle energy signals.
That's a really cool way to think about it. And it goes back to that idea of us being the broadcast, right?
Yeah. We're constantly transmitting our own energy signature into the world.
Exactly. And just like that snail sensing its environment, other people are picking up on our signals, whether they're aware of it or not.
So then our energy actually has a ripple effect, going beyond just ourselves.
Absolutely. Dr. Lipton believes that our energy can actually influence the experiences of those around us, for better or for worse.
Wow. Okay, so that adds another layer of responsibility to the whole thing.
It definitely does. But it also shows the potential for positive change, right? If we can become more conscious of the energy we're putting out there, we can actually contribute to creating a more harmonious world.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
But let's back up for a second. If we're buying into this whole idea that we're energetic beings and our consciousness can exist beyond our physical bodies, how does that change how we view death?
Well, for one thing, it could help us overcome that fear of death that seems to be so uniquely human.
Right, like other animals don't seem to worry about dying the way we do.
Exactly. And Dr. Lipton suggests that this fear is actually what drives us to seek comfort in all these external sources of power, like religion, government, material possessions.
We're so afraid of the unknown, of what happens after death, that we give up our own power in the process. It's like we become dependent on something outside ourselves to make us feel safe.
Exactly. But what if death isn't an ending? What if, like Dr. Lipton suggests, it's just a transition to a different state of being?
A different frequency, like changing the channel on that TV.
Yes. And if we can really embrace that idea, it can be incredibly liberating. It frees us from that fear that holds us back from living fully in the present moment.
Right, like if we're not so worried about dying, we can actually focus on living.
Exactly. We can tap into our true potential, live more authentically, make bolder choices, and create a life that's really in alignment with who we are at our core.
This is getting deep.
Yeah.
We started with quantum physics, and now we're talking about spirituality and the meaning of life.
I know, right? It's fascinating how science and spirituality seem to be converging on this idea of consciousness and energy.
It really is. Okay, so if we can accept this idea that we're not just physical beings, that we have this spiritual essence that can exist beyond our bodies, what's the purpose of it all? Why are we here?
Ugh, the million-dollar question. Well, Dr. Lipton has a perspective that I find really resonates with me. It's both simple and profound. He suggests that we're here to experience the richness of life, to feel the full spectrum of emotions, the good and the bad. Remember that chocolate analogy?
Oh yeah, if you're just a spirit, what does chocolate taste like? That was a good one.
Right. It's a reminder that our bodies are these amazing instruments that allow us to experience the world in a way that we couldn't as pure consciousness. We can taste the chocolate, feel the sun on our skin, connect with other people on a physical level.
Okay, I love that. But if we're all just energy, how come we each have such distinct personalities and experiences? Why aren't we all just one big blob of consciousness?
That's a great question. And Dr. Lipton brings up another fascinating concept to address that. He talks about how each cell in our body has a unique set of receptors on its surface. Think of them like tiny antennas picking up specific frequencies of energy.
And like a radio, we each have our own frequency.
Exactly. And those receptors are different for everyone. So we're all tapping into this universal field of energy, but we're each experiencing it through our own unique lens, our own set of receptors.
So we're all connected, but we each have our own individual perspective.
Yes. And those individual perspectives are what make us unique. It's what allows for such a diverse range of human experiences. And here's the real kicker. If we're all part of this interconnected web of energy, then what we do and how we think really matters. Our actions and our thoughts have ripple effects that extend far beyond ourselves.
It's like we're co-creating reality,
Yeah.
both individually and collectively.
Yes. And that's a really powerful concept. It means we have a responsibility to be mindful of the energy we're putting out into the world. Are we contributing to a more loving, compassionate, and harmonious reality? Or are we adding to the fear, the conflict, the negativity?
Well, those are some big questions.
They are, but they're important questions to consider. If we want to create a better world, it starts with each of us becoming more aware of our own energy and making conscious choices about how we want to show up.
So it's not enough to just understand this stuff on an intellectual level. We actually have to put it into practice.
Right. It's about making choices that align with this understanding of ourselves as energetic beings. Choosing thoughts that empower us, emotions that uplift us, and actions that contribute to a more harmonious world.
It's definitely a challenge, but it also feels like an incredible opportunity.
It is. And it all begins with a shift in perspective. Seeing ourselves not as isolated individuals, but as part of this vast, interconnected web of energy that links us all.
This has been such an incredible journey so far. I feel like I'm seeing the world in a whole new way.
Me too. And it's only just the beginning. There's so much more to explore, so much more to discover.
Well, I'm ready to keep diving deeper. What's next?
Let's talk about what this shift in perspective actually looks like in practice. How do we become more aware of our energy and start making more conscious choices?
Let's do it. I'm ready to put all this mind-blowing knowledge into action. Okay, so much to unpack from that last point.
Right, it's a lot to take in.
It really is. Yeah. We're talking about a whole new way of seeing ourselves and the world.
Absolutely.
But what does this shift in perspective actually look like in practice?
It really comes down to recognizing the power of our thoughts, our feelings, our intentions.
Right.
If we're all interconnected through this field of energy, then what we put out into that field matters.
But how do we become more conscious of our energy? We can't see it. We can't measure it.
That's true, but we can feel it.
Right.
And that's where the awareness comes in.
Okay.
Start by paying attention to how you feel in different situations around different people.
Okay.
What kind of thoughts and emotions tend to dominate your inner world?
So you're saying we need to tune in to our own internal energy barometer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Notice what drains your energy and what energizes you.
Right.
Pay attention to how your interactions with others make you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Are you uplifting those around you, or are you bringing them down?
It sounds like becoming more aware of our energy requires a certain level of honesty and self-reflection.
It does, but it's well worth the effort.
Yeah.
Once we become more aware of our own energy patterns, we can start to make conscious choices about how we want to show up in the world.
So if we realize we're stuck in a pattern of negative thinking or feeling drained by certain people or situations, what can we do to shift that energy?
There are lots of different practices that can help.
Oh.
Things like meditation, mindfulness, spending time in nature, engaging in creative activities.
Right.
These can all help to raise our vibration and shift us into a more positive state of being.
So it's not just about understanding these concepts intellectually, but also about putting them into practice, making them a part of our daily lives.
Exactly. And that are making choices that align with this understanding of ourselves as energetic beings.
Right.
Choosing thoughts that empower us, emotions that uplift us, and actions that contribute to a more harmonious world.
It sounds like a tall order,
It is.
but also an incredible opportunity.
It is, and it all starts with a simple shift in perspective.
Okay.
Instead of seeing ourselves as isolated individuals separate from the world around us, we begin to recognize our interconnectedness. We see ourselves as part of something much larger, a vast web of energy that connects us all.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
It has been.
I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of who I am and how I fit into the grand scheme of things.
I'm glad to hear that.
But as with any deep dive, it leaves me with more questions than answers.
And that's a good thing.
It is.
Questions lead to exploration, to discovery, to growth.
So to our listeners, we leave you with this.
Okay.
If you are truly an energetic being, what kind of energy do you want to radiate out into the world?
That's a good question.
What kind of reality do you want to co-create?
The choice is yours.
Wow.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Awesome.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for this incredible deep dive
Of course.
into the world of energy, consciousness, and the mysteries of reality.
Always a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.